All right, yo everybody. Here's another episode of the Mind Body Marathon. This one is going to be a best of episode. So I took 6 of the most popular episodes from the first year. So last week with the autism awareness episode, that was our 52nd episode. So we've done one full year. And so today what we're going to essentially do is take 6 of the most popular episodes and splice in 10 to 15 minutes from those, and we'll kind of walk you through what that is. Next week's going to be different. That's going to be some of my favorite times, but this one is basically, so next week's going to be some of my favorite times in terms of what I think are some of the most impactful episodes. But this week is basically statistically the most popular ones. So statistically, the first one was our episode with Meghann Featherstun, with Featherstun Nutrition. And on this, we're going to talk a lot about sodium replenishment and basically carb loading. That's what I splice in. Our second most popular episode was with Clayton Murphy, right before the Olympic trials of last year in 2024. And we'll talk a lot about his experiences racing internationally and some of his mindset stuff. And then we're going to get into Connie Gardner, which the famous ultramarathoner from Northeast Ohio. And we're going to talk about her experience of getting the American record and kind of the build up for that, and some pretty fun stories from that. She's a great storyteller, so that'll be great. Then we visit Katie Moon, Olympic gold medalist from Tokyo in the pole vault, and we talk about her mindset and what are some of her greatest experiences in track. And then we delve into masters running with Aaron Rowe, one of my good buddies, and we're mainly in that episode going to talk about his time training in Kenya. And that statistically had some of the highest peaks for the first year with ratings, and he tells some great stories of being able to go to the Eliud Kipchoge camp and running up the mountains with the Kenyans and spending a month in Kenya and training with Kenyans, which is pretty sweet. And then the final bit will be about our sauna and cold plunge episode. And so we're going to kind of rehash some of the benefits of that and some of the highlights there. And statistically, that was one of the more popular episodes as well. But again, thanks everybody that have been listening over the course of the year. Really appreciate your support. We got an exciting year coming up for 2025 and 2026, and hope you enjoy. Thank you. Topic because you have an element product here, and so I was talking to one of my patients last week, and she was talking about how she went on a long trail run. She was training for a 100-miler, and she ran 30 miles in training, and she comes home and she was getting ready to go to a party, and then she just passes out in the bathroom. And then she ends up in the ER, and then she ends up in the hospital for 4 days with severe hyponatremia. So she had water toxicity. Mm-hmm. So she was drinking too much water and not enough electrolytes. Mm-hmm. And she just was like an old school runner that didn't really understand the component of true hydration, which is the balance of electrolytes and water. Exactly. So can you allude a little bit onto that and give some people some insight there?
Yeah. And so I've been a dietitian for probably almost 20 years now. And so I was a dietitian clinically before I started running. So when I started running, similar things were happening to me as I didn't really know what I was doing. I was a dietitian, but I was carrying a water bottle. I'm a very heavy, salty sweater and would feel really dizzy at the end of runs, get really confused. My hands were swollen. And I was like, what is happening? Like, what's happening here?
Seriously.
So I kind of threw myself into sports nutrition research to try to help myself. And then I was like, wait a minute. If as a dietitian, I don't realize I need salt with my water when I'm running, to your point, do other people?
Right.
So that's kind of where this all started, was like curiosity for how do I help myself? And then realizing that there was a huge, knowledge gap with a lot of runners. Like, oh, I just need water for hydration, where we're losing, 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams of sodium per hour. And she's out there for hours. Yeah. It's really
easy. What's interesting is you alluded to earlier that you were a salty sweater. And I'm not. Mm-hmm. And I'm one of those people that can finish a workout and I won't have any salt stains anywhere. Like I'm not a heavy salty sweater. And so it's really interesting that there is that just like anything, there's sort of a continuum on how much water versus salt you can have. Mm-hmm. And everybody, you just need to sort of tinker with it, right? You just need to sort of experiment.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of know your symptoms. So when people come to me, sometimes they're having cramping. And it's because they're going into runs dehydrated, or they're not taking adequate, fluid or sodium while they're out there. Or some people have really bad GI issues that's from dehydration. Other people, like I said, get a little bit like confused or out of it. People have trouble recovering. There's just a million different symptoms that can relate back to a mismatch of sodium and fluid.
Yeah, and I definitely think it's something that, as you mentioned, like even as a dietitian, you didn't have that background of knowing about that. Because when I started running back in 2011, it's the same thing. You just have that mindset of like, oh, I need to be hydrated. I need to be hydrated. And all you think is like, I got to drink all this water, maybe some Gatorade, but you just don't think about like, there's so much more to that than that, which is why products like Element is so fantastic, because they already have the right ratios and then just knowing your body. Like I'm definitely a salty sweater too, probably because I'm Brazilian and we eat salt on like everything. I mean,
it is genetic.
Yeah, like I feel like I can never have enough salt. So.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in high school, I just randomly was like just driving somewhere and I was like listening to the radio and they were talking about how it was Howie Chiswick, the old guy that used to be on. Yeah. And he was telling this story about how this one, I think it was a radio station down in Columbus. They were doing like a little skit where they were having people like drink water and have a water competition.
Yes.
And somebody died.
Yes, I do remember that.
And so I just remember that. I was like, and then I had this thought in the back of my head, like, oh man, people can't drink too much water. And so I always kind of had that in the back of my mind. And then when I worked at a running shoe store, when I first got out of college and people were like looking for like different fueling options. And I would be like, well, I would ask them like, when you finish runs, do you have like salt marks on your face or do you not? And I never do. And like some people like have real salt marks on their shirts and their face and stuff. And I'm like, pay attention to that kind of stuff. It tells you how much you need.
Exactly. I mean, we have fancy ways to like figure out how much sodium we're losing per liter of sweat. But for most people, it's like a simple question, right? Like, do you see salt stains? Does it sting when it gets in your eyes? Are you a heavy sweater? There's all these things that can kind of just make us check. All right, I need more, and kind of figure that out. Because I mean, to your point, first of all, we know a lot more now about sports nutrition than we did when I started running in 2009 and you in 2011. We know so much more, but also like conventional nutrition wisdom is don't salt your food. Salt's bad. We don't need that much salt. So like using your client as an example, if she's heard that or maybe has a diagnosis of like prehypertension or a family history of hypertension, she's not salting her food. So she's going out here and sweating like crazy, not replacing those losses from her diet, only drinking water. And this happens a lot. Like it's very common for new runners to not get this quite right.
So well, okay, so I think that's a great segue then. So to hyperhydrate. So what about the idea of like carb loading? So what does the recent research say about that?
So I'm a huge fan of carb loading too. And that's the other thing, like carbs were the devil for so long. So we have these runners who aren't getting enough sodium. They're not staying hydrated and they're scared of carbs as they increase their mileage. And they don't understand why their performance is improving, why they're not recovering, why their paces are getting slower. And it's just, they don't have enough carbohydrates left in their body as glycogen where we store our carbs. So there's really good research. We can improve performance up to like 7% if we're carb loaded for a race effort marathon. So like if we're going out there regardless of our fitness and trying to race at the top of our fitness level, if we have full glycogen stores, we're going to decrease our risk of hitting the wall and being able to hold that pace for the last 10K, which is huge, right? That's the hardest part of the race.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm sure that the industry has definitely shifted quite a bit to hating carbs. And what I tell people is that there's no more important nutrient for performance.
No.
And I get it if in a base phase you want to tinker with like, sort of fat adaptation and things like that, which I think there's some benefit to that. But also when it comes to performance, like you genuinely just need carbohydrates. Like that's what your body needs the most during that performance.
Yeah. And like trying to keep it simple. Like when people are like, I don't know, am I getting enough carbs? Like I'm feeling really flat in my workouts or I'm not recovering. I'm like, throw some carbs at it. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? You still feel the same. Most likely you're going to feel better. And then you're going to be like, oh, okay, that's what it feels like when I'm not eating adequate carbs when I'm training.
When I was in college, there was this old school exercise physiology book, McArdle exercise phys book or whatever that I was like always kind of plowing through. And in passing, they sort of mentioned that if you have overtraining syndrome, to just increase your carb intake. And they were literally like, just have an extra bagel a day kind of a thing. And so I would tell my teammates that, and it would fix a lot of scenarios where people literally would just be like really run down, like really anxious, just not recovering in workouts. And then like, dude, just eat more, like literally just eat more. I would just say it like that. And then have a little bit more rice at dinner, have an extra bagel, and then they would respond really well. and improve it.
And they've done research. They're trying to figure out, is there even such a thing as overtraining, or is it always underfueling? And
Yeah.
like the line is so
That makes
blurry.
sense.
Right. And
Yeah.
and Viho would always say there is no overtraining, there's just under resting. And then his training, or his partner coach Terrence Mahone would always say there's under fueling. So they were like, one was you need to over rest, and then one was like you need to overeat.
Right. That's
No,
why, go ahead.
Our podcast with Katie Moon a couple weeks ago or last week, she mentioned how like on her rest day, she's like, I truly rest. Like I'm on my couch, I'm not doing chores, I'm not running errands, which I think a lot of people don't think of it that way.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, it's my rest day. So they're not doing a run, but then they're still like going grocery shopping or, taking the kids to the playground or whatever, and not actually off their feet resting.
Yeah. There was a key point I was just going to make about that. I would say when, what is it?
The resting or the underfueling?
The underfueling. Just had a mind blank. So.
I was
I hate when
going
that
to
happens.
say, when you brought up like you mentioned like anxiety and passing through that. And I see that a lot with people when they're underfueling, they don't feel hungry, but they're like, I'm so anxious all of a sudden.
Yes.
And it's like, that's your body's hunger cue. Because sometimes our hunger cues get a little bit skewed when we're training hard. And sometimes it's not like, oh, my stomach's growling. It's I'm exhausted. It's I'm irritable. I'm anxious. So it's like kind of redefining like, what are your
They're
cues?
hangry.
Right.
Right.
When you're not fueling it.
So now I remember. But this is interesting because a lot of my patients, when I talk to them about this, and they're definitely trying to recover more, and I can tell that their body's not recovering. I'll be working on them, and I'm just like, you're just in a funk right now, and just eat more. Well, they're always worried about gaining weight. But what I tell them is like, look, you don't have to worry about that because your body will use those nutrients. Just make sure it's good nutrients. Don't eat like processed carbs or whatever. Like eat good, healthy, foods. Like, and we know this from like nutrition research with regards to like burn victims. So, when people have like massive 3rd-degree burns on their body, they'll give them a huge surplus of calories and they don't gain weight.
Their nutrition needs are through the roof.
Yeah. And because they're just repairing all this damaged tissue. Well, if you're working out at such a massively high level and you have, all these nutritional needs based on how much damage you're putting on the body, it's like critical to go over the top actually.
Yeah. And, to that point, so many people are stuck in like the MyFitnessPal culture of like, I need to eat what I'm burning that day. Like people are trying to like match those numbers. So our rest day, I'm not burning any energy. I shouldn't be eating as much. And it's like, there's research to show like on rest day, our nutrition needs are even higher than some other days because we're repairing all that damage. So it's like really trying to undo some of these false nutrition things that people have been following over their life when they are trying to put that performance piece in there.
And it's interesting because, one of the advantages that I have with athletes is that I will follow them through a season. And this has been the case even with you. It's like at the beginning of a training cycle in a base phase, the body will feel a certain way. And then the muscles aren't as reactive, the tissue's not as dense. Then as time goes on, the body literally, the frame just starts to solidify and the nervous system is really adapt and twitchy. And I can tell if somebody's like right peaking, or I can tell if somebody's overshot their peak, and they're on the
Can
the
you
descent.
tell me this when you know?
Yeah,
this
no,
It's actually amazing.
I usually don't say anything unless it's a positive.
Okay.
Like when I say, "Oh, dude, you're gonna run out of your mind," like I mean it. Like that's a thing. Like,
that's why.
but if I'm like, "Hey, dude, you need to like, focus on rest the next couple of weeks, like really just like hunker down on eating and focus on rest," and it's like you're not where you need to be.
Right.
Like, so I'll say those subtle things. I won't say it directly, but. And I learned this trick because like when you're treating somebody like trackside at the trials or like at USA's, like you can make or break their performance if you say the wrong thing. And I hear people say the wrong thing all the time, and at the highest level you can imagine. The highest level, you see people on TV and you're like, why did you say that to them? Like before they went out and raced. It drives me absolutely bananas. And so there's a time and a place to say those things, and you can subtly be like, dude, tonight, like just get a little bit extra rest, go to bed early, little early. It's like those kind of things. Like you're not where you need to be, dude.
Right.
Or like,
don't say that.
Like don't say that. But like, I don't know, like it just drives me crazy with performance. But you can
It also
absolutely
works for
feel
pregnant women.
100%. I can shot call pregnant.
Yeah, he's done that to my sister and a couple other patients because he can tell like, oh yeah, their body's ready to go.
Because like sometimes like I'll adjust them and I'm treating them and the muscles are like just fighting me, and they're like their due date's there or like a week later or something like that. They're like close, and I'm adjusting them and treating them, and like their body is fighting me. and then they'll come in for another visit, and then all of a sudden, like everything just moves like butter. And I'm like, it's gonna happen. Like it's gonna happen like soon, like 36 hours
Crazy.
max kind of thing. And it's
And
happened
it
quite
has every time.
yeah.
Except
Because
for me.
it's a peak.
Mhm.
That's the thing. Like
Yeah.
that's the greatest peak of all time
Right.
is pregnancy.
Yeah.
And your body heading into that is resisting because it's formalized. It's like corralling all its reserves for the actual event itself. And then when it's time to go, the nervous system is just like super adapt. It's pretty cool.
Wild. Human body's fascinating.
Yeah.
It is.
So what are some other tips you can give people with regards to like performance and sort of helping out? So we talked a little bit about the carb loading. So what are some of the specifics of that? Like what is the timing and does it matter the night before or the couple nights before and all that?
Yeah. So there's really no time frame that we can carb load. Like we can build glycogen anytime, right? So a lot of the research in carb loading is actually a 24-hour carb load of like 12 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram of body weight, which is a ton.
Wait,
of food.
repeat that again.
12 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of body weight. So that ends up being like 800, 900 grams of carbs,
Yeah.
1,000 grams of carbs for some people. And what I've found is like, it's just not going to happen,
Yeah.
especially the day before a race. Like people are not going to
Gonna
be
eat them.
able.
1,000 grams of carbs is 4,000
Correct.
calories.
Yeah.
Of carbs.
Yep.
Wow.
That's crazy.
It's a lot to eat, right? So typically the way that I do it, I put a calculator on my website where people can just plug their weight in because not everyone is like speaking in kilograms.
what website is that?
Right? Featherstonenutrition.com.
Perfect.
And it'll spit out like what you need to eat. And you can pick if you want to do a 2-day carb load or a 3-day carb load. So people can see like, can I eat this
Nice.
much in 2 days or should I expand it to 3? I would say 95% of people do a 3-day carb load just
Mhm.
because it's really hard to get that much in, especially if you're traveling to your race. I have had some people that like don't love to eat a ton of carbs right before their race. So they'll carb load and then take a day off right before. So I mean, there's no right or wrong way to do it as long as you're eating enough. So, we can be kind of creative with
I mean,
like,
you guys know me. Like, it's not like I eat super healthy. Like, even when I'm eating healthy,
You're a can
like
guy.
it's not like it's not like my eating healthy is like I'm never counting calories. And I'm like, it's like kind of like I had Jersey Mike's for lunch today. Like, it's just like kind of like it is what it is.
Yeah.
But like in off season, it's just it's all hell breaks loose. And
Oh,
it's
yeah,
like
dude.
whatever in the
Yeah.
world I want. Like if it's 2 beers at night and
Yeah.
like if I want pancakes for breakfast and like pancakes
Yeah.
for lunch and then
Yeah.
like Taco Bell for dinner, it's like
Yeah.
sounds good.
Okay, so you obviously cut out the cookies and cut out the extra stuff. What else do you tighten up with your diet when you kind of get into race season?
I try to just be smart about it. I mean, like, I don't think you can make it rocket science. Like you really can. But I think for me, it's like just being smart about it. It's like, if I'm going to have Chick-fil-A for dinner, it's like grilled chicken sandwich or salad or like, like the chicken tender, not whatever the bites are, like not breaded, like just trying to be conscious about it. Like, I mean, if I'm going to have tacos for dinner, like I'm still going to have regular tacos. Like last night I had leftover tacos for dinner. Like it's not like I'm eating, like can't put seasoning on it and I can't like eat white, normal flour tortillas.
This is always the thing that I appreciated about you as an athlete is that you could compete really well overseas because you were so flexible with your diet. Whereas so many athletes, especially pro athletes, they're very like particular about what they eat. And then if they go in Europe and race in the Diamond League series, it's like they get screwed because not everything's going to be gluten-free. Not everything's going to be straight organic. You're not going to be able to eat like strict diet like that. You kind of just have to roll with the punches. And this is what I think is such a hidden factor in competing so well internationally. You made 2 Olympic teams, hoping to make your 3rd. And then it's just like, and then you've competed massively well on the European circuit and the Diamond League circuit. And I think that's a big reason why is you just kind of roll with the punches.
I mean, there's so many punches to roll with, like simple things. Like there was a hurdler with my agency that we were like traveling with, and he kept saying how he wanted to try to go to pre-race pretty much 24 hours before he raced. And when you're in Europe and China, like in Asia, you pretty much race at night, almost like exclusively. Like it's always evening races. So like you're going to the track at the evenings, which tracks aren't really always open. Like even like the day before, like they have certain hours because they're doing, rehearsals or opening ceremonies or, other meets are going on. So he kept saying like, I want to go at this time, but there's like no shuttles running.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, you're about to learn. Like you just go, like, obviously you have ideal times you'd want to go, but pretty much like you just say like, hey, like,
but if it doesn't happen,
if it doesn't happen, it's like, I mean, I couldn't even tell you what I ate for lunch the days of those races. Cause like, it's just whatever, whatever I feel like is going to be the best option I have. You just kind of almost take a gamble on it.
Which in a weird way, this goes back to kind of our mind component of the Mind Body Marathon sort of idea is that like, when people put so much stock into the process and so much stock into like, I'm running well because I ate this or I had this routine, and you're just like whatever about it. It's like, then, that sort of takes away from your mental component, just that urge to compete well, because everybody's so hung up on the process of it. So I think that's kind of an important point.
Well, and like with that too, like for people that are watching and everything, like I've been traveling out with Clayton now for this is our 4th time for USA champs at least. And last year in particular, after you qualified for the world team, you came up to JT and I, and you're like, everything that coach told me not to do, I did. But I think that's like the beauty of the 800 is that now it's so like one little thing goes wrong and it just can throw off everything, but you have to be adaptable. And I think like the way that you approach your training, the way that you approach like your ability to be successful always kind of ebbs and flows because you have to be adaptable,
Yeah, it almost segue into like my entire like mindset or like motto this year is like when I mentioned like decisive, confident decisions. And I think like if I'm fit and healthy, which that's obviously goal number 1, and I'm not the fittest I've ever been in May, but I feel like the overall healthiest and like best buildup I've had in multiple years prior. If I can piece that piece with making confident decisions in the race, then like I'm at the best I can be. And there's obviously race scenarios that are better for who I am as an athlete. Like my ideal race, if you could pick, is like 51, 52.
Right.
Like to run 143 change. Like
Yeah,
that's what I would love. 50.5, 52.5, like that sort of range.
Yeah.
But if the race is 49 flat at trials, or if the race is 54 flat, like I have to be physically ready for it. And I've told coach that I'm like, train me for that. Like train me for everything. We obviously have a best case scenario, but like I want to be ready for everything. Like I want my differential between my best possible scenario and my worst possible scenario to be the tightest of anybody on the starting line.
Yeah.
And then allow me as the athlete, as this, 29-year-old experienced guy who's run so many 800s in his life, to like, let me make the decisions in the race. And maybe the race scenario isn't perfect, or maybe my decision making isn't perfect. But if I make confident, smart decisions and I run well based on this type of race, maybe the worst outcome is medaling.
Yeah.
But if it's a good scenario and I make good decisions, then I win the race.
Right.
At the end of the day, like if I'm top 3 at trials, it's a win. And if I'm top 3 in Paris, it's the end of the day, it's a win. If I win trials, which is my goal, and if I win Paris, like my ultimate goal, like those are great days. But I have to be in a position to do that. And if I don't practice it, like that's what I went to China for. They needed to practice making confident decisions in races.
Right. What so obviously you've turned into a big trail guy. You won your first trail race a couple months ago.
Have more trail wins than track wins.
So like, I've had a couple people say like, I noticed that like, Clayton didn't run, indoor this year. And, obviously you took the indoor season off and you focused more on kind of like doing a different thing. So like what was your reasoning
your buildup has been different.
It's been much different. And having been on trail runs with you, like I kind of have a small idea, but I want to hear more from you and more in like detail with that.
So like getting knocked out in the prelims of Worlds was like up there as like one of the hardest like ways to end a season. Like 2022 was obviously an extremely hard way to not end the season, but in the season in Eugene. I felt like the season ended in Eugene. Like that was gut wrenching
for sure.
To get knocked out in Budapest was gut wrenching because I felt like I had a chance to make the final and compete for a medal. So I needed a hard reset. I went through a lot in my life with literally moving back here in the middle of my career. And I really didn't kind of like have a chance to really, we're in the middle of the pandemic. I didn't have a chance to kind of like accept that. I didn't accept the fact that I gotten older and, I wasn't as, this young whippersnapper, as coach calls it, like anymore. And I had a kid who was born, extremely early, and we spent a lot of time in the NICU. And I spent a lot of time last year, like leading into Budapest, like being a father and trying to run, and not just like being a father, like truly like waking up with him and staying up with him and feeding him at night. Like I was fully involved in it. And for me, I needed a reset. And then I also was like, I hate easy runs. Like I do. I hate going for 60-minute runs, an hour runs. Like it's just not fun to me. I would rather track run every day. Like I wish I was a sprinter. So for me, like knowing that I'm about to go through April, May, June, July, August into September and having 3 to 4 days a week where I'm going to the towpath, there's bike and hike and running 45 to 90 minutes and grinding it out in 90-degree heat. Like, do I really want to go grind out 90 minutes on the towpath?
Yeah.
September, October, November, December, January, February. Like, so I was like, screw it. How do I go for 60 minutes, less time on feet, but also, you know, run the hills, run the trails, work on that, and also just have fun.
Right.
Running again.
Right.
Because for me, like, if I'm not having fun doing it, it's like the mental side of it. It's just,
Well, it turns into a business, and it is a business for you, but you got to find that, you know, you got to find that line where, you know, you can still have fun with it. And I feel like that's what the trails did. I mean, when we went for runs, like, we were just talking and, you know, just shooting it.
Who
and-
offered up the idea? Did Labady mention, or were you just like, I think I'm just
I
going to start
just
running
did
the
it. I
trails?
just started doing it. I mean, we always did. I mean, in college, like we would run, like we would go to ledges and run.
This
And
is
we
what
would
I'm
go to
saying.
like, we'd do that kind of stuff in college where like we would go on adventure runs and
Right.
just be like, he would just drop us at the reservations or metro parks and just be like, go run. And then like when I lived up by Sugar Inn, like in Beechwood, like
Yeah.
I would go run out there. And then like, so I had experience in them, and from college, like I knew where some of the places were, and I started running. And then it became a thing of like, let's go find a new trail to run today,
Right.
and like stuff like that.
And that's the thing.
Great
We
time.
live.
Yeah.
What stands out to you as the absolute climax of your career? This is the thing I'm most proud of.
Okay. See, once again, it was almost there. It was almost there. Worlds. I was like, it was the year I was turning 50. So it was like 10 years ago. Worlds. I'm in Poland. And I did the math. So I don't like, you know how I did want to set the American record.
World what? World 100?
24 hours.
World 24.
So that's okay.
And-
Right there, when I say 24 hours, then it's just like, it's more like, this has got to be something for me. I'm not trying to impress anyone, because that's a really stupid thing to do. That's where the book is like my kind of stupid. It's just my world. My
Yes.
stupid world is different.
Okay.
It's like, it means something to me. So it's not, but to the rest.
Well, that's why I wanted to ask the question. I want to know what you feel like
Right.
your climax is.
So in that rate, I had wanted to, just because I had done the math, I knew I could run 150 miles in a day.
Okay.
Right. So I had a method, and I mastered it, and it was set. Right. So I just need a day. So I'm at a world competition. So you have the best in the world, and I'm running for USA, and you have the gear. So that should like make me feel like,
Proud.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe a little incentive.
All that, like you kind of,
Yeah.
it's like putting on a nice pair of spikes.
Yeah,
Like if
it's
you're wearing a
good.
good kit
There's some
from USA
value to
track and
that.
field, right?
Go buttoned up.
So yeah, and at the same time, every time I put on a USA track and field outfit, I thought like, you do feel like an imposter, you know, like I would, you know, I did. Because the thing is, I'm turning 50 at the time. So it's like, I get there, and I was like 8 hours into the run. I asked them that we had like team managers, and I asked them if they could just tell me when I went through the 100 miles. And I just wanted feedback twice at like 16 hours. And I wanted to know when I went through the 100, because 16 hours is when the race begins. You have the final 8 hours to accomplish what you need to do. And that's where you really have to focus.
So that was part of your strategy.
That's my strategy. So that's all I needed. I don't need you for anything.
Get to
else.
16, get
Yeah.
to a certain point. and
I'm
then-
going to be solidly into 100 miles, and then I just have 50 to go in 8 hours. It's all doable, you know?
Yeah.
So I asked them where I was, and I asked them where I was, and this is like the team managers, whatever. They're like looking at me like, well, you're in Poland. I'm thinking, what? No, what? And then you have to run another loop. And then when the board comes up, when you're running by, they have a leaderboard up and numbers pop up. It's all kilometers.
Yeah.
I'm in Poland. And then the other thing is my name will pop up after I pass. So I can't tell
you can't
where,
tell, yeah.
I don't know where
Can't
I
turn
am.
back around and
But
look.
I was just thinking, I'm having a really good day. Like there were no hurdles. I don't know why. Every once in, if you run 200 marathons, you're going to have a couple where there are no hurdles, where you
Yeah.
think, oh my
Right.
gosh,
It's the smoothest thing ever.
Yeah.
It keeps you addicted to it.
you might have a couple, which I get in a hole in one and golf, which I've done before, but it's like,
Dang.
Yeah, we're learning so much right now.
but it's like it's But this was that day where I can see everything's going great. The only problem was I didn't have any feedback.
Hmm.
And the other problem was I had my stuff in a bin on the table and all the gels that I use and the drinks that I use, I made it
Yeah.
all up and they're supposed to hand it to me. And I'm thinking, you don't need to touch it. Just don't touch my stuff. Like it's right here. And I want it right here. And I'll be
Yeah.
able to grab what I need when I need it. I know what I'm doing. They took everything off the table and put it behind the table.
Oh,
So I would ask for a gel and they're handing me somebody else's gel.
Oh,
And I'm
my
like, I
goodness.
can't do that. I worry about sugars. No, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm only hammer gel. This is all I've used and it works like magic. So that was kind of the only flaws in the day were like that. I wasn't given proper nutrition, which is a big deal. And I
That's
didn't know
insane.
where I was, which
the
is for
deal.
Makes me-
pacing. And I've never used like a Garmin, you know, this is like, I have nothing.
She has
You
no
see-
watch tan
No
line.
watch tan line. Yeah, I
Oh,
don't do
dude,
that.
dude, I have it. I have all you guys
You're this
beat.
guy.
Yeah.
Dude, I have all
see?
you guys beat.
This shiner of a watch.
That's
I don't know who's worse.
You're both. You're taking all the fun out of it. But anyway, it's like
No, this keeps me on track during work.
oh,
We text each other during work.
oh, that's really funny.
It's really more for like work than it is for
Yeah.
actual like timing.
But it's like so then when I finished, it's like I finished it and a horn goes off. You're in this 24-hour race, and somehow I just end up on the ground. So I guess like when you're running these things, I feel like a lot of times I felt pretty good. Like at the end, like I'm running, just nice rhythm, moving along, everything's great. And I'll see other people and I'll think, man, I'm glad I don't look that bad.
Yeah.
But it's all in my brain. I do look that bad, but I'm not because I've seen pictures. But in my brain, I think I'm pretty strong. But all of a sudden the horn goes off, I'm on the ground. And then I'm laying there. And then the team from Great Britain was like, hey, you got to go over to awards. And they helped me up and bring me over to like podium, whatever. But then I had to go get drug tested. And I couldn't pee, you have to pee in a cup, you know?
Yeah, I'm
How do you
sure
pee?
that was
You run
going to take a
You run
while.
for 24 straight hours. So I'm sitting in there for hours with somebody that doesn't speak English, and she's
Yeah.
trying to wait for me to pee in a cup, and I can't pee in a cup. And it's hours. So I finished like the best race of my life, best run of my life. Then by the time I get back to the dorms, my friend's boyfriend is like, hey, Connie, I think you got the American record. I'm doing the math here. And it's like,
So what was it?
and it was, the American record had been 145 and I got 149 point something.
You're right there.
Yeah.
That's amazing, though.
Yeah, but if I would have had somebody say kick, I would have done it. You know
Oh
what I
my
mean?
Goodness, I hear what you're saying.
I didn't
Yeah.
know. I
Yeah.
didn't know. If I would have known, I definitely could. If I would have known at 20 hours, if I would have known at 16 hours,
And
I
you
would have
requested 2 things.
yeah. If I would have
3
known,
things, really.
if I
Don't
would
touch
have
my
known
stuff.
at 16 hours
Well-
exactly where I was, it would have been fine.
This is the thing. It's like when you get into these international races and, you watch like the Olympics and you think, we saw this with Sha'Carri and Shelley and Fraser. Like there are so many circumstances that happen behind the scenes that, food is different. Like,
Mhm.
like structuring warm-ups is different. Like everything is different. You just have to roll with the punches. And like you were
Yes.
saying, like you run the race of your life and you end up in drug testing for 2 hours afterwards.
More.
Like-
I don't know. Forever.
like-
yeah. But it's not like, but I didn't even know at the time.
You had no
I'm
idea.
like, I'm in there with a bunch of strangers and the team's already back in the dorms. And, I got
So what did you place?
well, this is really sad. It's really tough because it's the world's, and there's a girl from Great Britain. She's awesome, and she was just crushing it. And then at like 20 hours in, I was starting to see her down, and she was like hurting. And I thought, okay, I could be. And I did ask one of the guys, the manager. I don't even want to mention his name because Mike Spindler he's race directs JFK, but I mentioned his name.
It's okay.
I said to him, hey, what place am I in? Because after I saw her drop out, I didn't know who else my competition was. And he had no idea. And he's the one that's getting the feedback on the sheets of paper. And all he's doing is following Mike. A teammate was getting the American record for men. So he was just watching him. And he doesn't care about women. He doesn't even know what I'm on track for or anything. He did not pay attention.
Oh, I hate
to
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too.
So it was
That's
kind
the
of
reason why you're there.
it was kind of tough. Yeah. And then so when I asked, like, hey, what position am I in? I was probably winning right then because there was another coach that was on the track and he looked really into it. And she's from the Czech Republic. And he was right there. And he was even like nodding each time I went around. But I was thinking, wow, her coach is really on the ball.
Yeah.
But I didn't know she was in the game. And she beat me by just like a fraction at the end. But I didn't know I was racing her. So I got second. Doesn't that stink? So not only did I not get 150 miles, but I also got second place at Worlds, where I could have won Worlds with an American record and but the main thing was like, for some reason, the most important thing to me at the time was 150. And it's really hard to run 150 miles in a day.
Right.
So it just doesn't come up every day of the week and you can't do it. And I was turning 50. So I'm going to start going downhill fast, which I did. But,
Connie, that's actually when I first started to know you. Cause I remember in 2012 and 13, I helped kind of crew for you at that North Coast 24. Remember that? Up in Edgewater?
Yeah. So let's see. Yeah. Was it after or before that?
I think it was like
it was no, you did. I knew
one was before, and I think one was after that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't know all that was going on. Oh my gosh.
Oh, a lot of stuff has happened.
Well, I didn't know that this is the thing about you. Like, you didn't even say, like, everybody that was sort of rolling with your crew at that time, nobody knew that you were doing those things, that you lived through that craziness in Poland.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, but it's nothing you can't really explain it to people because nobody's done it before.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, like, I do have, honestly, I'm not just saying it. Like my top priorities all the way through are like raising my kids.
Yeah.
And so this is just, it's a hobby.
Right.
So if your hobby's just this, it's kind
if
of
your
like
hobby is on the verge of winning Worlds and just fractions away from the American record at the time.
Exactly.
But you got the American record at one point, right?
That was the American record.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, the records are super funny. So it's like, so when I got the American record, then my friend Jen Shelton, she's in that book you have shop. She's like, hey, what happened to you? Like, Kick, she's basically saying, like,
right
Kick,
there.
like, what the F? Why would,
Yeah.
you're second and you didn't even, you had 150 miles. You didn't even get 150. It's like,
Man, just dogging you.
and I said, you wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe what happened. I said, I would rather have Gwen be my crew than these new ones.
These
USA
big
track and
boobs.
field people, they were useless. I said, Gwen's a better crew. So, and she knows Gwen, and we're all friends. And so she's like, oh, I'm writing the article. So she wrote an article in Ultra Running Mag. So when I do it, Ultra Running Magazine.
I remember that article, actually. I do know.
It's actually kind of funny.
Yeah.
So she's like, Connie would much rather have her developmentally delayed, daughter, Gwen, crew her any time of the week before, and then Mike Spindler, who's a race director for JFK, reads the article. And I'm just like saying exactly what I felt.
Yeah. And it's okay to do that.
Yeah. And then
it's
the article,
Yeah,
so
it is.
Jen's a clown. So it's like, the article is super funny. So it's just like, this makes sense. Like that actually, it turned out perfect for me. So I finally get the American record. That's great. Tried for a decade to do it. Fine. Things fell into place. Got it. Check. And the fact that it is a stupid thing to do, to see who can run the farthest in a day. It's like, it doesn't,
I don't think that's stupid.
I don't think it is
kind of do.
I mean, yes, it is stupid.
There are better things you can do with your time.
We'll push back on that one.
Yeah.
That is not a stupid thing to do. That's one of the most mic drop things you can do of all time.
Yeah. And that's the thing at this point. It's like, you've put in the work, and that's the advice that I give the kids is come in every day just with intention, and let it be fun, have fun with it. But I wish that was something that I had learned at a young age, is the way that you practice is the way that you compete. And so when I am in practice now, every single jump, I am focusing, I'm cueing, I am telling my body exactly what I want it to do from every approach, whether it's like a straight pole drill or my full approach. I'm really telling, like focusing, just full mind body connection. And then when I get to a meet and there is adrenaline and anxiety and high pressure, I feel those nerves, but I'm able to like channel those thoughts into execution as opposed to just feeling everything. And that's when the mind can go to all the negative things that can happen. So if you just hyper focus on executing, telling your body what you want it to do, that's what's going to lead to results in a meet.
So with doing that, like you're saying, like just being focused as you're doing at practice and then being able to repeat that at the meets, do you do like meditation or the visualization, breathing? Like what kind of techniques have you brought into that, like tangibly, to be able to repeat that every time?
I guess it's my version of visualization. I don't do a ton of meditating, but what I like to do, again, I talked about the run earlier and how consistent it needs to be. We'll do a lot of pole runs where I literally run down the track with my pole in the exact same way I would if I was on the runway jumping into a pit, but I plant and then I run out of it. But I really try to make that the exact same every time. And then what I'll do at home, because there's a very specific rhythm for me, there's a very specific feeling. It's not just going out and sprinting. There's a very specific rhythm to it. So when I'm home, I will think about that rhythm. I will stand there and I'll just 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And I'll throw my hands up on one. And so that's my version of visualizing. And for me, if the run can be consistent, the rest of it kind of happens. So I think it's going to be a little different for everybody, what works for them. But for me, it really has been just even mentally dialing in the run and the rhythm of that. So that's my version of it. But really, when I'm home, I try to get away from it completely. I focus as best I can there. And then when I'm home, I really will try to just
that's good. I like that you do that. You separate kind of that work and play sort of thing.
Yeah. I don't get me wrong. Like I said, I will definitely do that visualization. Especially if I'm in a place like where I'm at right now, where I'm just a little inconsistent with it. But when I'm dialed in, I really just try to, when I'm away from the track, be away from the track. And then when I'm on the track, I am totally present there. Proud. Budapest, though, the stadium was completely sold out. And when Nina and I were going back and forth, which ultimately ended in us.
Where you guys decided to tie?
Yeah.
But
when we were going bar for bar matching each other and there were no races going on, the entire stadium was watching us. And it was unlike anything I had ever experienced. Like the electricity of that crowd was just unmatched. So I wish we had that in Tokyo, but at the same time, I can't wish anything different about Tokyo because it was the exact outcome I wanted. But I'm very excited
I was ready for something a little bit different. And so I decided I'm going to go to Kenya. I'm going to put myself out of my comfort zone. And I think for some people in the Western world, that's a little bit scary. And I've told people, hey, I'm going to South America, or say, I'm going to Africa. And they say, oh, isn't that kind of dangerous? The truth is that I've traveled extensively in both continents, and I've felt, I've probably felt more dangerous situations here in the United States. I felt completely comfortable in both those continents. But at any rate, you go to the travel doctor and they'll tell you about all these things that you can get in, say, the African continent or Kenya, and that's a little daunting. You got to get your malaria pills. But I was really excited and ready for something different and to go see that, get out of the Western world. So I traveled there by myself, met up with a group called the Kenya Experience. And so it's a British outfit, but they have kind of, they have you camped out in Lorna Kiplagat's training center, the high altitude training center. And so within that group, people all around the world came and joined that group, and they basically showed us the world of Kenyan running in E10, and they took us around and we did, the typical Kenyan Tuesday, Thursday fartlek run. That was like within the first week.
And what, of course, I went out at that time, and I went out right in the front, and there's 200 runners, and it's just crazy. A lorry's coming down the road, and somebody screams something in Swahili, and the whole group moves to the right. And I'm like, huh? Oh, wait, I gotta move. Guys are falling, and you're like jumping over them. It's really wild. It's very competitive. And so it's basically doing a workout with 200 people, very hungry runners. And
Okay, so let's back up. So, all right, this is at altitude. So what's the altitude?
8,000 plus.
Okay. And then I didn't know this was a thing. So every Tuesday, Thursday, they just kind of go out and hammer.
So you might have like your more exclusive groups like Kipchoge's group and whatnot. But in the town of E10, they'll have like a community run where, there's thousands of runners training there, and they'll come out and they'll jump in and they'll do some kind of fartlek run. And so that was within, I think, the first week or 10 days. So
Is there any structure to it? They're just like, hey, we're going to go 10K or 12K today. Or are they just like, we're going to go over there and then come back or something? Like, what's it like?
There's somebody who's kind of the leader, because he shouted instructions in Swahili at the beginning. So I had no idea what was going on. But of course, the Kenya Experience people knew, and they had the information ahead of time. They said, this is where they're going to meet, because there's different roads and different places. And so we were on this kind of wide dirt road that was, undulating. And so I got about 10. I wanted to make it to halfway, and I got to about 10, and I was completely cashed.
10 miles?
10 reps.
Oh, 10 reps.
I'm sorry, it was 30 by 1 minute with a minute jog.
Oh, okay.
So you go out and then you come back. So I made it 10 reps. And what I noticed as the group continued is that it just kept getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the runners will go out in the front and try and stay there. And if they die, they'll kind of cut their losses, regroup, and come back.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a mindset where they're like, I'm going to go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had Woodsy on the podcast, and we were talking a lot about this, and we were talking about a lot about the Kenyan mindset. And it's very alpha male. It's very aggressive. It's very intense. And when you come born out of that environment, and you go to the average Western race, like no dude's going to be able to mentally compete with you. I mean, you have seen it in racing, and I mean, you're pretty much are doing it every day. And there's been camps in the US that have tried this. I know Hanson's has tried this early on, where they just like back in the mid 2000s, where they're just hammer, like volume hammer. And they had a lot of success. And, and there's something to be said about it. Just kind of creating, if you can survive that environment and stay healthy, you're going to be special.
And for them, it's obviously an opportunity for upward mobility financially. You go and run a race in Europe, you go and run a race somewhere, and you make X amount of money. Maybe it's not a lot of money here in the Western world. That can be huge.
Yeah.
Going back to E10. And I visited one of the runners that was there and kind of saw his kind of humble. He kind of lived in a small sheet metal shack right outside this kind of store. And he had like a little futon, and his shower was just how he bathed was a kind of a plastic container that had been cut off on the top, and it just had water in it. And then his heat was just a little fire pit that he kept going. And so it was very, very humble. And he probably had a little more means to live than others.
Yeah.
So you can see that, there's some very hungry runners there.
And that's the thing, man. Say you're in some average road race here in the US, and you're duking it out with one of these Kenyans, and that's their experience. That's what they're coming from, and you're like, and they're just tough. I mean, like the dedication, the willingness to drive to just get through all that. That's pretty special. So, okay. So they would do two of the days would be fartlek. Okay. And then, what was the legendary half marathon up the mountain run?
So the Fluorospar run. And I don't know if everybody does this, but I don't know if it's a half marathon. It's 12 and a half marathon. Everybody said it different, like 20K. But so they woke us up very early, 5 a.m., something like that, and drove us to the start of Fluorospar. And we drove for an hour and a half, and we're deep in kind of the back parts and kind of the middle of nowhere in Kenya. So much so that the locals are looking at us like, who is that? Who are these people? And we're crossing streams in vans, and we're on dirt roads. And we're slowly going down into the Rift Valley. And so we get to the Fluorospar Mining Company. We're at the start. There's really nothing there. There's no bathrooms. You just go and the topography changed a little bit. And so basically it was a run that was 12 miles, and it gains about the statistics differ because it's so off the grid, but I think it's around 4,000 feet of elevation gain.
Yeah.
And about a 7% consistent grade. And there's a lot of switchbacks. And so all they said to us was, hey, if you can run under 2 hours, that's pretty good. And just run until you hit the tarmac road. That's the finish. So, and they said, don't go out fast. You know what I did. And there's another runner in my camp from Japan, and he was a good marathoner, about a 2:30 guy.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm 37. I'm not doing longer stuff. I'm running 5Ks on the roads. And so he went out, he shot out really quickly. And so I went kind of behind him and stalked him for a while. And then about 10 minutes in, I was like, he's not really going that fast. So I'll catch up with him, run with him.
Mhm.
And then I was like, I'm just going to go for it. And my intention was to only go halfway because we had done a track workout like 2 days before that. And I had ripped this track workout. And I'm like, I'm not a marathon runner. But you get there, you get in the moment. And I got about halfway and I'm dying because we're just going up and up. And I'm looking, I'm like, there's nobody behind me. I can take this thing. So I kept going and I just had to fight. And it was without a doubt the hardest run I've ever done in my life.
So who else was there with you guys with the group? Was it just the Kenyan Experience group?
We had some what they called pacers. So there were some Kenyan runners that they had hired and were in the group.
To kind of just make sure you go and show the way kind of thing?
There are runners from all around the world. 2 guys or 3 guys from Brazil that became really good friends of mine that I visited actually in Porto Alegre. Rodrigo, David, Leonardo. And then there's a whole contingent from the UK and from Ireland, just all over the world. And that's the cool part about it.
Yeah.
And so we had this kind of, by that point, it's the end of the camp. We have this camaraderie built because you spend so much time together eating and there's not great Wi-Fi connection.
Yeah.
And so we, that was the culminating part of our trip. And then, so we finished that and that was a really tough run, a great experience. And then right after that, they surprised us and they said, you're going to go to Kipchoge's camp. You're going to meet Eliud Kipchoge and all the people in his camp. So we went and did that.
So tell us about that.
So we got there and we were only there for about a half hour. And what was really unique about that is that everybody in camp, they have the bathrooms there and it's very simplistic.
So this was 18. So this is before he did the sub 2 attempt and all that. So he kind of, a lot of people didn't really know much about him, right? Because he was successful in what was it, 03 World Champs that he won?
Yeah.
Where he which I think is one of the greatest races of all time. In the 5K, he beat El Garouge and Bekele in the same race as an 18-year-old. It's a fantastic race to go back and rewatch on YouTube. And then he kind of was successful, but was okay pretty much. It's not like he was like Gebre Selassie or Bekele where he's just winning that all world championships and Olympics left and right. And then so that was really cool that they took you there because he was going to be famous literally the next couple of years. I think he wasn't maybe so much of a household name at that time, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. The other international runners, maybe like the runners from the UK knew him a little better. I'm not as well versed. I don't pay attention as much, but I knew who he was. But yeah, I think he blew up even more after that. And so one of the most interesting things about that is that everybody has their jobs and they have to clean the bathrooms. They don't have any staff or anybody that helps them. So Elliot's, when his turn gets called, he's going to clean the bathrooms.
Yeah.
They have a library. They don't think they have TV. So they have a library of books and they read. And so they just train and focus on training.
So where is this relative to Eton?
It was outside a little bit. I can't remember the name. It was Kapsagat.
Okay.
It was a little different than E10, but it was just outside of it. And great. I would have loved to have run there because it was beautiful. The roads were really nice. And you kind of see on his Instagram, you'll see him out there training.
Yeah.
My understanding is that those guys with their families is that they'll train during the week and then maybe go home sometimes on the weekends unless they're really deep in their training. So I got a picture with him and that was pretty exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. You should send it our way. We'll put it on the media. Okay. So how many people were training in his group? Like how many people were like living there kind of in that encampment?
I want to say probably no more than 15.
Yeah.
That's probably about it.
Hmm.
But you knew the names like Jeffrey Camerwar,
Yeah.
and there's another guy, I can't remember his name, but big track star. And then the guy that was in our camp was, sorry, I'm going to probably say his first name wrong, but it's Adoran Finn, who you have his book
Yeah.
back here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's like he wrote
Way of the Runner. Yep.
Yeah, The Way of the Runner. So this guy was there with him. He was your roommate, right?
Yeah. So
Adoran Finn. Yeah, this is about book about Japanese running.
they were going to room me. I was by myself for a little while, and I put in for a single room or a double room, and so I was going to have to share with somebody. And they said, "We got this high schooler coming in. I can't room with a high schooler." So they put me with Finn, as they called him. Everybody called him Finn, and poor Finn, he's probably like had to put up with me for a week. But it was awesome for me because I got to talk to him,
Yeah.
ask him questions, listen to him tell stories. And he's a great, great guy. And I love this book. And a lot of the runners that are featured in this book, I actually got to meet when I was there. And Japheth, who is featured in this book, was the pacer that I ran up Fluorospar with. He stuck
That's
with me the whole
amazing.
way. So it's really cool. And I have the same book. It's a little bit different because I bought it. We were in Eldoret. We had come back from somewhere, and we had gone to some like little mall or something. And Finn had gone in. He said, "Hey, my book's being sold in that store in there." He's just kind of laughing about it. So I was like, "Oh, I'm going to go in there and buy it. I'm going to get you a sale, man." He's like, "Oh, thanks."
That's really cool.
So then, of course, at the end, I had all the main players that are in the book that were in our camp sign my book, including him. And so that's just an incredible experience.
Oh my goodness, that is awesome. But we always joked, like when I first got out of undergrad, I remember I ran race in the middle of the summer, and I got my teeth kicked in by a bunch of Africans that were really, really good, a bunch of Kenyans that were really fast. And they it was in the summer, it was in July, and I remember thinking, man, like how in the world are they able to run that fast in the heat? And this was like circa 2007-ish. And then a couple weeks later, or like a month and a half later, I run a Labor Day race, and I beat a lot of them. Like a couple of them beat me, but I beat the majority that beat me down at this other race. And the only thing that was different was the temperature was like 20 degrees cooler. And I was like, I don't know how to run in the heat. And it's clearly an issue. And it's my fitness was actually should have been worse in the second race. So then I literally was just cooling down with them and just talking about it. And they're like, oh yeah, we just like literally run in our Fila outfits the whole time. Like we just basically heat train constantly. And so then I always joked it's like poor man's altitude training, you know?
Mhm.
The running in the heat is like literally like training like you're in like at altitude. The benefits are the exact same. You're going to get an increase in blood volume. And
Do you want to explain why that happens?
yeah, so like basically whenever the simple mechanism is that whenever you're in a hot environment, your body puts out a stimulus to get blood to the surface, to the extremities and the surface of the skin quicker. So it increases capillarization in the blood vessels or in the body. So which means you're going to get more surface area that your blood can travel through, so it can distribute heat against the skin. And then that's how you cool yourself off. Obviously, you do that by sweating. But if you get more blood vessels towards the skin itself, then you can cool off quicker. Now, altitude training works by increasing hemoglobin based on the decrease in oxygen, but the effect is you increase your blood volume because you can't thicken your blood with excess hemoglobin. So that's how you get an increase in blood volume. But it doesn't adapt you actually to the heat. So it behooves you actually to actually heat train because that makes you more efficient in performing in the heat and also gives you the same blood volume benefits. The other side effect that's really interesting with performance is that if you increase your capillarization, that means that you have more miles of blood vessel in your system. Now that means you can, whenever you get lactic acid production from muscles, now you have a larger surface area to distribute that lactic acid. So you feel the effects less. It's actually kind of amazing how that works. But what's funny is you can do this with sauna work. So just even doing like, using the sauna a couple days a week for like a half hour will essentially mimic like a double in running. And obviously we'll do the same thing. You're going to get the boost in blood volume and, You know, there's all sorts of other benefits though.
Dude, remember, can we name drop on
Yeah,
this?
sure.
Von Steen?
Yeah.
A couple years ago. So Von is a ultra marathon runner in Ohio, and he qualified for Western States 100, and he was in the masters age group.
He was that year. He was the oldest finisher, which was 21 or 22.
Yeah,
he was the oldest finisher
Yeah.
at Western States.
and he would do his training runs and then come here and get in the sauna. And I think he did that like 2 or 3 days a week.
Yeah.
And when he came back, and I think it was like him and like 3 or 4 other guys. I can't remember, but he was the top finisher. And I think the 2 or 3 other guys like DNF'd, and then maybe
Yeah.
one other guy finished, but he attributed it to coming to the sauna.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, you're running 100 miles, and the sauna is the thing that like,
The other thing that's really interesting is that
awesome.
when you integrate sauna work into your routine, and we'll discover a little bit more here in a second about what different types of sauna, but if you integrate it into your routine, you will literally recover quicker. So not only is there the performance
Mhm.
benefit, there's the recovery aspect, because it just has to go down to activating heat shock proteins. So heat shock proteins are basically epigenetic modifiers that will manipulate the genome to make you more efficient with recovery, and also like it sort of activates life sustaining genes. And that's really the genius of the heat therapy. Dude, I'm like a solid 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Because I'm
Yeah.
like, life's too crazy. I just got to
Yeah.
get in, get out. But
Once
with-
I get past the minute or two,
well, that's what I'm saying. So like if you do a 5-minute session of it, say classic dose, 3 to 5 minutes at 45 to 50 degrees. Keep it simple. If you do a 5-minute dose, your internal dialogue is like, what the hell are you doing? This is crazy. This is crazy. This is nuts. This is nuts. And then about 90 seconds in, it'll go, okay, all right. I'm fine. 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. Great. The last 2 minutes, just sharp.
Mhm.
You're just locked in, and they're like, you're cold. It's almost like you separate your mind from your body. Your body's like, dude, I'm cold. And you're like, okay, that's fine. You're just cold. And then you get out and you're like, okay, you're cold. It's not like it's affected. It's not like it's an emotional thing anymore. Like you literally early on, you were literally like, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. Like that's kind of what your body's telling you. And then eventually your brain goes, nah, dude, we've been here
Mhm.
before. You're not going to die.